Excuse me. Welcome, everyone. This is podcast summary 3. Today we're going to have a chat about our fascinating conversation with Jamie Hamilton, football coach, and well, he's more than a football coach, really. I think he's a real deep thinker about the game and tactical elements of the game. So we're just going to jump into that and just summarise a chat around that. And I know, actually, Keith, that conversation is really, I don't know if inspired is the right word, to write a few publications, hasn't it, around relationism and positionalism in football. So yeah.
So fascinating. There's a kind of a if you like, a new type of communicator, applied scientific practitioner communicator, and a specialist in football. And I think Jamie Hamilton is one of a small group that you could call, he's obviously an academy coach, but also a football theorist, which is more than being a journalist, a media type writing about it, but someone who also is fascinated by the conceptual basis of a sport, and which I think, adds to the quality of discussion, in my view. So fascinating discussion, I seem to remember.
Yeah, absolutely.
He still coaches as well, which I think is really useful. He can bring that experiential knowledge with his theoretical knowledge. Coaches at the under-16s at Ayr United. Remember people.
That's right. Yeah, remember that. Very good.
Very strong on X.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the first thing that struck me is I suppose this is what comes with the territory in terms of being a deep thinker, but how do you even get to that position? Where's all this knowledge and information come from? And I know when we were chatting to him about, I suppose, his journey, if you like, a bit corny, but his history, he's just self-taught, real deep research, looking at a lot of South American coaches, and really trying to understand all these different ways of playing football. And he actually coined the phrase, didn't he, Keith, this idea of relationalism, and he wrote some fantastic articles that will recirculate within the show notes on the Medium. And he's done a real deep, I mean, it's PhD level, really, the research and the writing and and the impact as well. Obviously, impact's really important. And the impact, I think, is having within the game and getting people thinking about how you might play differently, but also what does that mean for practice design, which is really crucial, So and that just blew me away. It's wow, got the agency to go and do that and really understand and work things out for himself, which was really sort of pleasing to see. Yeah, definitely.
I think one of the things that I captured from the conversation was that this focus on that football is fundamentally a human game, rather than, and so there's the data analytics and the statistics, and of course they have their place, but perhaps at times there's been an overreach, and that risks becoming the entire image of what football is. And it's the mystery of being human that drives what the game is all about. So there's clearly there's no one way of doing it, and the culture and it's not an abstract thing. You've got to take into account the philosophy, the psychology, the artistic nature, etc., the social traits.
Good point, Ian.
Yeah.
Really good point. I mean, we made this point in a research article where we've explored the relationship between performance analytic, motor learning, sports pedagogy, etc. And we talked about the notion that coaches should avoid being data-driven, which is just really totally reducing things to a numbers, looking for patterns, and trying to make it into a number game, and you end up being, trying to do something by numbers, as it were. And instead, we argued that a better stance to take is to be data informed. So you have some evidence there, when you consider, something's happening, or maybe we should try this, or maybe this is what should happen. There is some evidence you can explore, but it doesn't absolutely drive your thinking. And I really like the idea. I think some of the best coaches, in my view, some of the best coaches in football, and this could be in other sports as well, are the ones that are really emotionally intelligent. I think that's a massive part of the skill set nowadays, because the old style educational approach of do as I tell you, and do it quickly, that seems to be, thankfully, ebbing away.
Military style.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, that was one of the things we talked about, wasn't it? The coach as a facilitator versus a controller.
Yeah.
The controller obviously has this sort of top-down instruction with predetermined patterns, knows exactly what should happen, moving the chess pieces around on the pitch.
That's right.
Players execute the plan versus the facilitator approach, bottom-up emergence, creating conditions for creativity and guiding, but not dictating, not telling, and allowing the players to solve the problems themselves.
Yes.
And I guess that's where the contrast was in the positional approach versus the relational approach, which is where Jamie was really coming from, isn't it? So
Yeah. He painted a picture of almost like some coaches almost operated a coaching style where players were remote controlled,
yes.
Robotic sort of thing, and coaches was trying to seek some sort of outcome of practice, which was automaticity, that players would do things without thinking, which is, as you said, Ian, that completely misses the humanistic point, the point about human nature. And one thing that people might say is that, okay, well, part of human nature is that there's variability in there, and that there's uniqueness and individuality, etc. And some people think that when you're trying to get a collective system organized so well, running so-called smoothly, effectively, and efficiently, that means that there's no room for variability. There's no room for unique choices and decision making and individuality in certain situations. But of course, that's just rubbish, because in sport, at the right time, individuality and uniqueness can break a deadlock in a competition, for example.
Yeah. It's definitely, and certainly in the sport that it's aimed at, football, it's such a dynamic process. And as look, I don't want to comment and have it's not a strong opinion on this, but it could be the case that maybe Man City are getting worked out a little bit more. So you have to be adaptable, don't you? Not as an individual, but as a collective. And that point about adaptability, and maybe that's sort of been taken away a little bit through this positionalism. So really interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite interesting that already the game seems to be moving on, because there's a lot more long passes being played. I won't call it the long ball game, because that sounds like how it was played in the 1980s, which was to hit spaces upfield, towards the corner flag, and then try and reset, in an advanced position. That wasn't really, in my opinion, it wasn't really a sophisticated tactic. But at the moment now, the quality of long passing that's on offer from defenders at the back is so good, and isolating players, attacking players one-on-one up front through a sudden long ball, and then the use of set pieces becoming more prominent, and long throws. So it seems like the wheels are turning a little bit more, even as we're chatting about a podcast that happened earlier this year.
Yeah, I mean the huge debate around England's last couple of games, and Tuchel saying we should start taking advantages of the long throw, and that creating a massive debate around, well, shouldn't we? Well, why shouldn't you? Almost. But go on. I think really interesting. Like a lot of the managers certainly in English, the Premier League. I think now there's very few English managers on there, so the social cultural influences of the country of origin of the managers is perhaps an interesting challenge when you link that to British culture or English culture. And I guess the same when it goes overseas. But that's something else we talked about with Jamie, wasn't it? About the European influences
Yeah.
and versus the South American influences, as he described them, the tricky subversive games and dance. We know the Brazilian dance and artistic expression.
Yeah.
And then the regional identity that James Vaughan has done quite a lot of work around, hasn't he, about the Basque, the Barcelona of Argentina's La Nuestra way of playing,
Yeah.
and regional playing styles within countries. And I remember having a chat on it. I was at a conference, Football Australia conference, and I was talking about social cultural constraints. And one of the coaches was talking about a particular area of Melbourne that was quite working class. And they said the players they play a really tough style of play. It reflects where they're from and where they where the way that they're brought up, the way that they live. So really interesting style of play, wasn't it? And that
Just
influence. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're spot on. Like, and if anybody does read Jamie's, I won't call them blog posts because they're more than that. They're really articles, journal articles for me. But that comes across really strongly in that socio-cultural element.
Yeah.
Just rewinding a little bit, you spoke about the long throws, and that theme's emerging now, or that tactic this season. So I'm just looking on the Premier League website now. So the 25-26 season, the average long throwings per game is 3.03, and last season it was 1.52.
Wow.
And then way back to 2021, it was 0.89. So it's
Wow.
it's interesting, and just one other on that before I make the point I'm trying to make is that goalkeepers are going long now as well. Apparently,
Yeah.
You'll see this more than me and Ian, Keith, obviously with your interest in football. But how different is that from previous seasons? So, and I think the point here, the worrying thing here is when we know coaches copy, we've all done it. But if that then relates this idea of playing a very certain way, and players are sort of drilled into doing this in an academy or even in a community team, a local amateur team. The problem is then when the game evolves and changes, and there's a different skill set required. I think sometimes players might struggle to this idea of be adaptable and change because they've only ever known one way, and maybe one way of coaching, one style of behaviours that they really struggle, they're really sort of used to, and then changing that can be quite difficult. I think so. That's a concern. It's like the you'll know the year. I think was it the 1990-91 season when the back pass rule changed.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
it was absolute carnage for about a one season.
The goalkeepers couldn't pick the ball up. From a back pass. Yeah.
Now I'm sure they were training for that. Of course they would be, but it's that point about adaptability. We want players that can work that out quite quickly without lots of intervention. So really interesting. Now we're seeing a shift, and then are players able to adapt to that shift in style? So really interesting.
I think with all these throwbacks that the media might sort of present it. I mean, today I saw an article of a newspaper interviewing Sam Allardyce, who back in I don't know 20 years ago, the long ball and the set piece game, he had a lot of success as the English manager in the English game. At the Bolton Wanderers, he was the manager, and he had a lot of success with that. But it was out of some skill. But I think what we've got to do is understand that, like, when you have this retro fit that happens in different aspects of culture, whether it's food or fashion, music, there's a throwback to how things used to be decades ago. It's never a cut and paste. It's a modern interpretation of it. And my interpretation, my view of the so-called going back to the more of a long ball game, as I said, one, it's actually long passing, and two, if you've got to look at it, that the best proponents of this, the goalkeepers and the fullbacks at the back, they put a really much flatter trajectory on the ball. So it's not just to loop it high in the air and win the second ball. I mean, obviously winning the second ball is really important, but it is literally an accurate pass to a centre forward move, a striker or a player running from deep. And they can control the ball coming over the shoulder of a defender. Some of the skills are out of this world, because you see it that players are controlling a ball that's coming over their own shoulder, and they're controlling it and getting an opportunity for a quick shot at goal or whatever. And it's the same with the long throw. The long throw is causing havoc at the moment because it's a flatter trajectory, so it isn't just a looped. It's like the best free kicks, the best corners as well. They have quite a nice, demanding, challenging trajectory on it. Swerving in and flatter, harder to defend against, and they just need a touch on the ball and bang, there's an opportunity at goal. So I think it is a modern twist on a previous tactic.
Do you think the ball will? Do you think the ball will influence that? Because I know the technology of the ball. I mean, we're not playing with a pigskin anymore, Ian.
No laces on it, Martin. Have they taken the laces out?
Yeah.
I used to get that on my forehead when I played.
Yeah. Because I remember, when was the World Cup? That was World Cup where the players, not necessarily moaning about the ball, but it was quite a thing, wasn't it, in the media?
South Africa. I think,
it would swerve. It would move in the
2010 South Africa, I think.
I mean, it was a big thing last year with Arteta, wasn't they, complaining about the ball? And then I saw something on YouTube where they tested out all the different balls, and they did behave quite uniquely different. But I think that's a really good point, that Keith, that the banana kick, or being able to swerve the ball only sort of emerged in Northern Europe when we started going to plastic coated balls. Because up until then, the ball got heavy and wouldn't swerve.
Yes.
And I remember as a kid growing up watching, I remember going to watch England under 15s versus Holland under 15s at Wembley when I was a kid. And Brendan Batson, who was playing for England, who became chair of the PFA, didn't he, at one point? But someone in the game bent a pass around a defender to another player. And I was like, wow, unbelievable. So I went and tried to practice that. But of course, the ball was heavy, full of water, and I couldn't do it at all. But in pre-season, in July, when the pitches are rock hard and the ball's dry, I'm thinking, why can we do it now? The balls are lighter, they were just wet. That's all it was.
Soggy, wet, damp,
The point I was going to make was, when I was at Carnegie in the 1980s, there was a brilliant guy who taught us game of football there called Merv Beck, who played for, he coached Guiseley, or a very, very good non-league team. And he always said your best passer needs to be your goalkeeper, because they make the most number of passes in a game. So you're absolutely right about, it's a pass. It's not just a hoof up the middle. And in the mixer type of thing, is it? It's actually a pass. It's a deliberate pass to one of your own team.
He was way ahead of his time, Ian.
Well, he was brilliant, honestly. I think he was offered the Leeds job after Revie went, or maybe no, when Jimmy Arnfield took over. I think he was apparently offered the job. I don't know how true that is, but that's what we were told. But really, really fascinating guy to talk. Psychologist as well. He taught psychology.
I was university level footballer at undergrad and postgrad, and I played against teams that Merv Beck coached a couple of times. I don't think I was ever on the winning side. So
do we?
We'll go off down a little tangent if we're not careful here.
I'm not sure all the listeners might relate to the 1980s here. Should we just summarise? So, what would be the key takeaway?
Take home messages. Yeah, good point. I mean, for me, socio-cultural constraints, I think, very important. That there are different ways that players develop in different country societies that have different approaches, methodologies, emphases. Great example of environmental constraints as well. We've spoken about where weather conditions can affect the property of a ball in flight, and so different players from different countries can develop skills in a certain way, developed in unique weather conditions where the ball behaves differently, as you mentioned it. So for me, that's one of the important things that we discussed.
I think another thing that came out of the chat with Jamie was the importance of authenticity. Like a coach has to be authentic in their approach. That's what perhaps the most important method. So if you believe in positional play and you try and adopt relational, it's not necessarily going to work. So you've got to go with your own, but that doesn't mean don't develop your thinking, I don't think. So be inquisitive, be open, go and the top coaches are always learning, aren't they? They're always wanting to know more. They're always exploring. I think that's an important, aspect of being a good coach.
Definitely. So I was paying attention. I was just looking. So yeah, just for anyone, I would recommend, if you haven't listened to it already. So episode 17, Football Theory with Jamie Hamilton. I would recommend people going back and listen to it. I think there's loads of takeaways. I mean, where do you start? But the first one is if I think as a coach, I mean, I appreciate not everybody's got time, but just the way Jamie's gone about researching football and how that's influenced the way he thinks about football and coaches, that's just really impressive. So I would encourage, if anyone's a developing coach, make it your mission really, just to understand about stuff. You don't have to wait to go on a course or anything. And then I think, irrespective of the age or even ability that you're coaching, I would definitely play around with relationism. When I say play around, I'm sort of, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I mean, I would seriously have that. If that's not going to be the way you play, I'd still have that as part of your training program. Because I think that can develop so much more skill or skillfulness in players, not only from a physical aspect, social, psychological. From a movement perspective, I think you might need to start developing different movement capacities. So I'm thinking, let's rewind back to Ian's example of the 80s. A very rigid centre half that might be quite up and down. Like if you're now playing a game, where you're interacting with that game very differently over time, that is really your strength and condition, or part of your strength and conditioning program, because you're having to find different ways to move to be effective in the game. So I would definitely suggest, think how you can build that into your program. Yeah, definitely.
This is something we talked about in the chapter we're writing at the moment, and we're just submitting on the positional versus relational. But certainly in the developmental phases, if you're working with academy players, for me, relational needs to be have a majority, spend more time doing relational than positional, because you need to be people who've got 360 perceptual skills, who can see the what's in front of them, and be good, be able to adapt to whatever system they're put in. We know the success throughput from an academy system into the first team is minimal. So you might not even get in that team. The manager's unlikely to still be there if you're 12 and you come in the team at 2021, or you might end up at another team with a different style. So you need to have capability, don't you, to be intelligent footballers. See, and it doesn't matter which sport it's in, does it really? No. This whole debate is in all invasion games, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in this chapter, which I'm going to plug now, because it was great fun working on it, and I think it's a good contribution. So it's in a book on the EPPP, the Elite Player Performance Plan that the Premier League uses to frame academy work, coaching young children. And we were invited by the editor, Nuno Nunes, to write a chapter, and we suggest we're going to write it on positionalism and relationalism. And that's something actually that Jamie did emphasize in his podcast, that it's not an either or, it's more like a continuum, and you can move up and down that, which fits with the flexibility, adaptability idea that you proposed there, Ian, you know. But in this book, we talk about the notion that, you know, if you link it to ecological dynamics, the book has an ecological dynamics flavor. An important concept in ecological dynamics is coordination, obviously, and coordination of the individual, i.e. coordinating parts of the body, bringing parts of the body together to achieve a task goal. That has been called synergy formation at the level of the individual, but then at the level of the team and sub-phases of the team, small groups of players, etc., there's synergy formation that's needed there as well. People interact together, whereas positionalism is about the rational use of space and spreading players out. Relationalism is much more about forming sudden relationships on the field where players can achieve a task goal very quickly. So, you know, achieve an overload in an attacking area of the field, or protect their goal in a defensive area, etc. So that book will be coming out in 2026. We've just submitted a final version, we hope. And yeah, it was good fun working on it. 3 of us authors. What I liked about that book as well is that there were 3 quite sophisticated coaches involved, 4 actually, in the different chapters. One of them, Jim Mackay, was relating these ideas, pointing out how these ideas were infiltrating rugby union. And at the time that we're speaking, we're waiting for the Rugby World Cup final, Canada against England. And, you know, for me, watching Canada dismantle New Zealand, the Black Ferns, who won the competition last time around, watching that game last weekend, Canada seemed to me a very relational team, which were the point that Jim was making, is that you've got a version of relationism and positionalism in rugby union. And I really feel that Canada played like in a relational game, and England actually maybe a little bit more positional, and a bit of a mix, you know, positional in most phases, and then they suddenly break.
Yeah, cool. I'm just looking at the author listing. I don't know who Keith's referring to when he said 4 high-level, or did he say sophisticated coaches? I don't think he's included us in that, but anyway, it's all right.
Well, look at their CV. Sorry, yeah,
I know.
You're a World Cup winning coach.
I'm teasing.
I'm talking to a World Cup winning coach, of course, as well.
That is a pretty impressive list of practitioners. I'm just looking now. Yeah. That's a fair comment, Keith. So yeah, the title.
Name our co-authors.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
We're led well by Keith Davids, then myself, Fabian Otte, speaks for itself. Darren Hughes, outstanding. Pete Sturgis, outstanding.
Hall of Fame.
Ian Renshaw.
Hall of Fame.
Ian Renshaw.
Yeah.
Not Hall of Fame.
And then another outstanding. So these are all like
Jim Mackay.
Yeah, Jim Mackay. So international and coach. So yeah, right, really impressive. So yeah, so it's positional and relational football methodologies, implications for coaching and practice design in football academies. So yeah, cool. All right, gents. Yeah, great summary. I would encourage people to go back and listen if they haven't. Episode 17 with Jamie Hamilton. And yeah, thanks for your time, gents.
Thanks, Martin.
Martin, cheers.